in the lineup. Yeah, for of the school that you left.
We could walk him along.
I can have it.
Better not duck out. Can't trust this guy.
Yeah. I can have it. Yeah, they don't care. It wasn't about you, it was about them. Yeah. No, it was never bad. And we were going to check them out. Weird, like, didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, process it. It was approved. And I'm like, yeah, we don't care. And if he's not interested, you know, you can pass it along or we don't care. It was well.
No.
Yeah.
No, I checked. It doesn't work.
Oh, it's broken before then?
Yeah. And he was like, I don't even know if I can get this in my room. Can I stand up?
I can.
Yeah.
Oh, it does work.
It can only go down if it.
Would you guys like to help setting up chairs? Yeah, just a few of them this way. Something like shoes with more just about. Can't tell it's how you got that car. Right. It is.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for coming tonight. This is a public meeting of the of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'll pause and ask Superintendent Wimmer to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please join me as we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We recognize a quorum of our school board with all 7 members present tonight. Next on our agenda is approval of the agenda, which I had mentioned was posted in advance. I would move to approve this agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kurt. Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our agenda is approved. So we will move on to recognition. And so we have a number of recognitions related to Wisconsin School Music Association and Exemplary Performance Awards. Hopefully I got that right. And we've got a couple of folks here, I think, who are going to walk us through this. Is Leah Duckert here by chance? Leah, come on forward. Our high school band director. And Seth Matuzek, possibly here? All right. Our high school orchestra director. Come on up.
I'd also like to introduce Corey Murphy, who's our other high school band director. West Bend High School's music programs, choir, orchestra, and band, are proud to be a member of the Wisconsin School Music Association, otherwise known as the WSMA. WSMA sponsors a regional solo and ensemble festival in early spring at a local high school. This year it was ours. Outstanding musicians performing at the most challenging difficulty level may earn a rating that allows them to move on to the state festival, which occurs in late spring at a university.
The Exemplary Performance Recognition Project expands recognition of outstanding student performers at the WSMA State Solo and Ensemble Festival. State Festival adjudicators identify exceptional performances at each of the state festival campuses through a 2-step process: nomination and final selection. Throughout the day, adjudicators have an opportunity to nominate students whose performance was truly exceptional, beyond what is typically expected for this age group. At the end of the day, each adjudicator selects the most exceptional performances to receive the Exemplary Performance Award from among these nominated.
For us in band, we have the trombone quartet standing in front of you. Our exemplar musicians before you this evening embody everything we strive to impart upon a strong public education. These students have a strong work ethic and a sense of commitment to themselves, their colleagues, and their school. They understand teamwork, they communicate effectively, and they are open to learning new concepts. Further, these exceptional young adults are bright, talented, and wonderful role models and leaders within their school communities. Do you want to bring up your kids?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce?
Oh, sure.
Yes, please.
That would be great. We have Connor Trahan all the way that way, followed by Matthew Chappell, Josh Wagner, and Ethan Buss.
Great. Congratulations.
I'd like to bring the orchestra students up here. I'll reiterate everything that Leah Ducker said about her students that she presented up here. These are members of our West Bend High School Chamber Strings Orchestra, and this is our highest level performing orchestra. We regularly perform repertoire of the collegiate level, and they're all leaders, highly dedicated, and strong work ethic, and just like I said, reiterating everything that Leah Duckert said. So we have Jacob Cooley, Lilia Gierek, Anna Gergitz, Anthony Gonring, Abby, what's your last name? Lagram, thank you. Keegan Kynes, Cecilia Stowers, and Riley Albert.
All right. Thank you. Photos?
I got him.
You got them. All right.
Send him to Leah. She'll send them to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everyone for coming. I took piano lessons for 12 years, and I was terrible. Because what I figured, it's a combination of having talent and cultivating the talent, which takes a lot of time and energy and focus. And so I applaud all of you. It's a really, really impressive accomplishment. So congratulations on your awards. Well deserved. At this time, we'll pause a little bit because, again, this is a public meeting of the school board, and we encourage people to stay for the entire meeting. At the same time, it's technically a school night.
Right, they probably
Right.
have homework that they want.
Homework. It has nothing to do with the fact that
They
it's
have
just
exams
beautiful weather.
They want to be prepared.
Yeah. So if you wish to exit, we will not be offended. But in the meantime, we'll continue on with our agenda. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I think while they're exiting, we'll kind of get settled in for our next agenda item, which is our student representative reports. And I've got 3 individuals present here. I see Noah Minty. Let's see, I also had listed here Hasi Gasemovagar and Diego Prescott, if they're present. But I see Noah present. Come on up, Noah.
They're seniors. They're too cool for us today, I
Well,
suppose.
apparently. Welcome, and thank
I
you
do
for coming.
apologize. I only prepared the clubs and co-curriculars
Okay.
portion of this, so I'll be reading the whole thing. All right, so let's start out with student life and academics. The project Lead the Way Engineering and Design Department capstone projects were delivered and completed on May 25th. The students did a great job delivering their solutions to real-world problems, like how to get your drink to chill faster. The College and Career Center hosted the military signing. Students and their families were excited and proud. It was an excellent showing, and the word on the street is it's the highest number of students committing to different branches of the military in quite a few years. It's very exciting. The art department hosted the AP art show. I myself attended, actually. It was a beautiful display. It showcased a lot of the hard work and dedication of our students. It was very impressive. The biomedical Project Lead the Way program received their white coats. This is the largest class of graduates ever in the program, and they certainly worked very hard to get there. So moving on to co-curriculars and clubs. We have the civics team. They won the state championship. A team of students from East and West high schools won the 3rd annual Wisconsin Civics Games, presented by the Wisconsin Newspaper Association Foundation. The winning team was made up of Owen Damcott, a West junior, Danny Zolp, a East junior, Abby Lockram, a West senior, and Maya Latour, a West junior. I hope I got those names right. They were advised by the social studies teacher, Mark Drake, and each member of the team won a $2,000 scholarship to Wisconsin College or University of their choice. So another team from East and West competed at the event, which featured 13 schools from across the state and had advanced from a field of 166 during regional contests. So the East and West Forensics teams, or the East and West Forensics and Debate teams, my bad, went to Kentucky for a high-stakes national competition on the 25th through the 28th. No one broke to prelims, but everyone did an exceptional job, and we made a lot of unforgettable memories. So, board, thank you guys for proving that. It was a lot of fun. Lastly, for clubs and co-curriculars, speaking of nationals, this June, the Skills USA team will be off to Atlanta. Wish us luck. And then that brings us to athletics. The Senior Athletic Awards event for West Bend East and West, where both schools honored a number of student athletes for their achievements, were held on Sunday, May 21. Awards such as the Nancy and Alan Pick for Outstanding Female Athlete, Carl Pick Memorial Award for Outstanding East Male Athlete, and Andy Pick Memorial Award for Outstanding West Male Athlete were handed out. In addition, it looks like Jeff Rondorf won the Prudence Pick Highway Coach of the Year, or H-Way Coach of the Year award for 2023, not Highway Coach. And then the state send-off for boys and girls track was June 1st, and state qualifier luncheon was held on May 31st. And that's everything.
Great. Thank you very much for the update. Appreciate it. All right. Next on our agenda is public participation, and I have 2 public participation comment cards. I'm just kind of doing a visual scan if anyone else has one. All right. So with that, I will read the public participation portion of Board Policy 187. There we go. We've come to the public participation portion of our agenda. Board Policy 187 prescribes the nature and procedures for this segment. I summarize the policy at this time, but copies of the policy are available at the back of the room, and I encourage you to familiarize yourself with the policy in its entirety. Residents of the district, parents of children in district schools, and employees of the district may participate. Participants desiring to address the board should obtain and complete a participant comment card near the entry and turn it over to the president prior to the meeting or when allowed by the president. Participants may comment concerning an agenda item or a non-agenda item. Each participant will be called to the podium and given 3 minutes to speak. The participant must state his or her name and relation to the district. This information will appear in the minutes of the meeting. The board will not engage in debate concerning the remarks or take immediate action. The board policy may refer the matter to the superintendent, a committee, or take the remarks into consideration in future action. Board Policy 872 provides a formal process for citizen complaints, and Board Policy 520 provides a formal process for employee complaints. The board recommends use of these procedures as a guarantee of fair and timely response. So I will invite our participants forward to speak. There will be a visible timer behind me to help manage your time and to help that all participants are heard and that this meeting runs efficiently. Please abstain from conversation, comment, or applause during or after public participation comments. So with that, I will introduce our 2 speakers. First, Ms. Jody Geenan, welcome you to the podium. And Ms. Geenan, you indicated on your participant comment card that you are a resident of the district. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. The next 3 minutes are yours.
I am here today concerning our school district's nepotism policy 511.1. While I'm all for freedom of speech and sharing of ideas, I also believe in advancements due to merit. Of the 7 school board members, 2 of them are affected by the nepotism policy. Chad Temez, whose wife is an aide in the school district, and Kelly Lang, whose sister, Kara Petzold, is a teacher in the school district. As written in the policy, the organization, management, and control of West Bend Joint School District Number 1 is vested in its Board of Education. Accordingly, in order to assist the board in best and fully discharging its duties, as well as to help avoid favoritism or its appearance, board members may not make any decision involving a family member's employment status, including hiring, retention, promotion, evaluation, or compensation determination, or improperly try to influence others to extend special preference or privileges to such family member. In addition, board members may not participate in any manner in any aspect of employment policies which affects a family member. In order to comply with these requirements, it is fully expected that any board member in such a situation recuse himself, herself from the decision on such matters. Chad Temez is on the School Board Policy Committee and Kelly Lang is on the Curriculum Committee. Both committees deal with issues that will put them in a conflict of interest where they should be fully expected to recuse themselves. In Chad Temez's case in particular, the Policy Committee has been in discussion about the nepotism policy and he has not recused himself. He has even said he feels the nepotism policy is too restrictive. I am not only disappointed with his ethics on not recusing himself on an employment policy that clearly affects his wife's employment and his position on the school board, but I am even more discouraged at how an attorney and the superintendent of schools, both sitting on the same committee, are not asking him to recuse himself. This is unseemly, especially because the school board has to avoid even a perception of impropriety. To make my point clearer, I will use a couple of analogies. By allowing a board member who is affected by the nepotism policy to help revise the policy in his and his wife's favor, since he has stated that he thinks it's too restrictive, it would be like having a CEO profit from insider trading information or corporate buyouts. Not all shareholders have this inside information. It would also be like allowing a professional sport team write the rules in their favor for a game. This is quite absurd. Something else to ponder. Can board members provide examples of who's been hurt by the policy being too restrictive? What about equity? The school district is an equal opportunity employer and should provide equally to all taxpayers. I am asking Chad Temez to recuse himself from any further discussion on the nepotism policy and for the Superintendent Wimmer and Attorney President of School Board Chris Weiger to encourage him to do so. In addition, I am requesting that any and all influence Chad Temez has already made with regard to the policy be revisited and dismissed before it reaches the full board, and that both Chad Temez and Kelly Lang recuse themselves from voting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we next welcome Jane Heggie to the podium. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes,
Excellent. And Ms. Heggie, it indicates on your participant comment card that you're a resident of the district. Is that correct?
I am, thank
All
you.
right, the next 3 minutes are yours.
I'm coming here as a resident of the district, reminding board members and officers that voters rely on elected members of the board to conduct all their business in good order, and that all their actions will be the result of that work. To not do this in good order risks inefficiency and a lack of action that will affect the entire district, all the students, community members, and all the people that these students will affect in their lives. Please be efficient. Do your work in good order. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last participant comment card. Thank you to those for commenting tonight. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have minutes of the May 22, 2023 regular board meeting and executive session. We have 11 contracts that were included, 3 resignations, no retirements, and disbursements posted through May 27 of 2023. I move to approve this consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. All right, just going to gather my notes here. There we go. All right, next we move on to reports and the policy committee report. So the policy committee met on May 23rd and again on May 30th. So we've had 2 meetings since last time, and we welcomed our newest member, Dr. Temez. We discussed a number of items. First of all, the future cycle for reviewing policies. As we heard about today in public comments, we have been talking about the nepotism policy. We took into account the concerns and the questions that were expressed by the board during the last session, legal recommendations, continuing to work on some language to lend clarity to the policy. We're also working in conjunction with the curriculum committee to review policies in the 300 series that relate to instructional material, selection, and use, largely in response to community concerns that have been expressed related to certain books that were being read or accessible to students. Then we also looked at transportation eligibility. I think these were in policies 423 and 751. And what we want to do there is clean up some language that exists that allows buses that may stop and pick up one child but not another child from the same family because of just an idiosyncrasy in the wording. So that's something that we are going to recommend be cleaned up. We also had heard at prior board meetings about the idea of metal detector use, and so the policy committee looked at language that could be developed regarding metal detector use. And then we also are going to be, and we have started, our final series for review, which are the 800 and the 900 series, and those are community relations and facilities. So that's a summary of the work of the policy committee, and like I said, we're aiming for a more kind of consistent review cycle for these, for the policies. So that would conclude my report, but I welcome my other committee members to add anything I may have missed. Any questions? All right, thank you. Next, then, we have the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yeah, at one of our last meetings, board member Mr. Donaldson had asked for an update regarding behavior work. His work in the policy committee got brought forward to the full board. It predates some of our newest members being here. But in the 400 series, it's around student behavior. And we did that, a deep dive with our administrators. We reviewed, revised, and added a lot of policies. But then we took a look alongside the policy language. We look at the family handbook, the student handbook that went with it. And we talked about kids understanding, parents understanding, their signature on that understanding, those consequences that go with, failure to meet expectations. So we'll have that work. I would anticipate that would be at our July meeting to come back formally to the full board so that you can see that. I think Mr. Donaldson's talked about it, if then, like if you do this, then this is going to happen. And then we talked about writing it side by side with student-friendly language for different ages, as well as that family language, because that handbook is something that they receive and sign off. So we dug into that piece as well. So we'll have that cleaned up and ready for the full board to review. And then we can make suggestions for revisions at that time. It gets us plenty of time to make sure we're pushing it out to families over the summer, having preemptive conversations, and then how we onboard our students with that coming into the fall and set that clear expectation. So that was one of the big pieces for an update. So I wanted to update everyone on that. It is the last days of school. I don't know how we got here, but last week was amazing. You can see the pictures on Facebook, but we had our grad walk. That's where our students who will be graduating shortly on the 11th go back and visit their prior schools. They get to walk the halls. Their families go. Their teachers are there. Little kids are looking up to them. So that was successful last week, and it culminates back at the high school with a luncheon. So our final day, and it's a full day of attendance for students, is this Thursday. But right around the corner is summer school for our students. So that's Monday, June 12th for students in grades 8 through 12, students currently in grade 4K through 7. It's going to begin on Tuesday, June 13th. There's also a second session of summer school that runs July 31st through August 11th. And then in August, we do some jumpstart activities for those students beginning kindergarten, 5th or 7th grade, and then they'll have further activities for freshmen as they enter the high school. So a lot of kind of looking forward to that next year. A special event taking place this week is the completion ceremony for Project Search. The West Bend School District partners with West Bend Mutual Insurance, The Threshold, and other businesses to help children with significant disabilities gain a marketable job skill. Often the students are participating until age 21 with us, and students complete several internships throughout the year and take classes to learn all sorts of different job skills, some ending employment right in that company that they've been working with. So it's an amazing program. Jill Corbett is our administrative coordinator for student services, and then just a wonderful team who works offsite in various avenues to develop those skills. So that's always fun. And then Moraine Park is hosting an open house Wednesday from 4:30 to 6:30. So all high school students, families are invited to attend. They'll be able to tour the facility, learn about technology and training environments, learn about the new transfer degrees, and there'll be food trucks. And also on site will be our tiny house. So our students taking construction, recall that we host construction. We don't have the facility to build. They allow us use of space on their campus to build out the tiny house from design to completion. That's something that Habitat for Humanity then sells tickets for, and they do an auction of that, and they raise funds with that build. So it's amazing, and that will be on display, I believe, all of June. They'll be hosting that just, again, to help us with space and keep it prominent in the community. And you heard Noah talked a little bit about the send-off for track, and I'll just give you a little update that West Junior Franklin Confira finished 6th in the 100-meter dash and 5th in the 200-meter dash at the state meet. He also broke the school record with, this is amazing, a time of 21.94 in the 200. It would take me that long to get off the starting block, if at all. So well done, Franklin. And West Junior Cameron McAndrews took 9th in the high jump. So congratulations to those. I'm sure as we kind of get the end of the year, we'll recognize our student athletes from their final representation of West Bend School. So congratulations to them. And then there's a photo exhibit at the library. It's our advanced digital media class, and that is on display at the public library through June 16th, and it's called Erratic Thoughts Through a Creative Lens. And again, that's our advanced digital media class. So I would encourage everyone to go check that out as well. And that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Questions for Superintendent Wimmer? All right. Hearing none, we move on to discussion items. And our first discussion item tonight, high school physical education program and course updates. I believe we've got a number of presenters here.
Good evening. So I'm here with Joe Schmitz, a member of the high school PE team and also part of the department, and we're here for physical education updates, is Kyle Feger, Mark Pertel, and Elisa Spaeth. So what we're going to go through is kind of the context of the department. Joe will go through courses to sunset, revise, and to add. The department context is the mission is, making sure that everybody has access to well-quality courses and planning and programming throughout the high school. The requirements are 1.5 credits, and we'll kind of go through that here in a second. But the work of this came out, and Dr. Reese kind of got us going into this process, but the program analysis of physical education, which brought K2 fitness forward prior, but kind of got us kickstarted on looking at our programming and planning 9-12 and what we can change and improve upon, and Joe was great in really leading this out and getting the team together and saying, how can we make it best for our students at West Bend High Schools? It was developed with the input of the entire department, and really this has been nice because it allowed the team to really go, okay, on a regular process, how can we look at to make sure that we're the most up-to-date possible to meet the needs of all our students at the high school? So our current flow chart is that students start with Fitness for Life in grade 9. Then they go on to a second context of courses that have Adventure Ed, Lifeguarding, Lifetime Activities, and then some capstone courses, which are kind of your Strength and Conditioning 2 and Adventure Education 2. Moving into the proposed flow chart, it will mirror kind of the Wisconsin State PE standards. We have required Fit for Life still, which was a correction from the original PowerPoint that you got. But so we have kind of column A, and Joe is really the expert on this, but really I'm a wannabe athlete. Kind of A is those skills, kind of understanding, hey, what goes into being a basketball player? What's a soccer player? Kind of team sports. B is kind of our college and career readiness, which is a huge emphasis of the district. And those green courses are kind of those courses that we're looking to add. We have coaching, intro to athletics. We currently have lifeguarding at the high school, which, as you know, you look at the news all the time, lifeguarding is needed everywhere. Officiating, also needed everywhere. And then strength and speed, and he'll kind of go into the difference in strength and speed and its context that we're proposing to move forward versus where it is now.
Thank you. We'll go courses to sunset. So personal fitness is the one course right now that we are proposing to sunset completely. It's very similar to the strength and speed. I think a lot of that curriculum can be kind of mirrored between that or even our virtual offerings. So that's why we're recommending to eliminate that. And then Adventure Ed 2, originally Adventure Ed 1 and 2 was kind of designed as more ropes and high elements, and some of those things have kind of fallen off. Students also have wanted more of the Adventure Ed 2 content earlier. So we combined them, looking at combining them into one course, which kind of just builds it out a little bit more thorough and robust. And then courses revised, these are more just name changes. So strength and conditioning, just changed to strength and speed, which is more modern name of it. Conditioning kind of has the negative annotation to it, where you're just running all the time and doing all that stuff. And we're really trying to use proper form and teaching skill along with it. And then what we want to add is an opportunity to repeat it. So if a student wants to take that course every semester, they have that opportunity, which will help alleviate some of the after-school issues, and also, kind of treat the pack a little bit better with the amount of people that are in there.
Just to add that, some listeners might not know what that means. So you're talking about the limited space and access to the weight room, and you might see a rush during certain seasons, things like that. But so you're actually expanding opportunities throughout the school day and then building on skills throughout. So it's now a larger continuum.
Correct. Well said. Thank you. And then we just changed the name, Adaptive Physical Education. So that course, we are proposing changing it to Personalized Physical Education. The district adopts the specially designed Phy-Ed. Those are anyone in IEP goals in special ed. Adaptive and specially designed are synonymous. If you look at just the curriculum in general. So just changing it. Personalized FIAD allows us to take more students and really have them help develop their own goals that fit a little bit better. And then these are the new courses. So one, proposing coaching. So we really looked at, when we look at these column B, these new courses, how do we expand kind of our current offerings in a way that students can kind of take it for the rest of their lives versus just the activity. So coaching is that expansion of team sports, but really trying to take it so if you have kids, you know, you're coaching a youth sport, you know how to kind of practice plan, you know how to kind of build that philosophy and kind of what it's about. So whether you go into education or in coaching in general, you still can use that skill for anything. Intro to athletic training. This is one some area schools are starting to kind of grow in. We can kind of be in the front of it though. Basically partnering with Aurora and our current athletic trainers, having students kind of you just partner with and mirror them as long as coursework and then that real life experiential learning. Going to be in the training room after school, helping tape ankles and those types of things, and then as well as at games and things like that. Officiating. This is one that the state of Wisconsin is actually really helping with. It's kind of a mix between team sports class where you're going to be active and an independent study. Through the help of our athletic directors, we can get basically independent study guides from the state in any sport. Students can basically help complete that work and then become a licensed official, starting all the way with youth sports right away. So that's something that they can use as soon as they complete it. So that's an exciting one. And that there's no cost through the state. The state's covering all that cost too. So it's just a matter of reaching out and doing the work. So that'll be fun. Course 4, this was one that we added post-curriculum committee. And this was just a mistake on my part not putting it in there. Basically, when we have our specially designed FIAD class, it's our special needs class, kids with disabilities and true help. We've had a few students that have kind of helped with it anyways, kind of independently. This is just a way that they can get credit for FIAD. So they would be in class, we'd work with them. How do you work with this student, whether they're blind in a wheelchair? So then they kind of can partner with those kids and just helps us kind of build a more robust class. We can play more games. Depending on the group, get into some more of the Special Olympics games where you have more people that can kind of support it.
That's a great intersection too. I know, like you said, it was a post-ad, but a really great intersection as we look to build up kind of the pathway for future teachers and getting that skill. So looking at potential special education and working with students, like you said, with really diverse needs. Just a really nice supplementary piece there.
Yeah. So here's the breakdown of everything. There's really no cost to any of it. When we look at, the I guess, teacher cost, we're shifting some of those courses around, so we should be okay. And then just as we get into the Aurora partnership with the Intro to Athletic Training, how much involved they are, and we can, if we move forward, we'll figure out what that contract cost could be.
So obviously, big thanks to everybody that was involved in the program analysis, Joe being the representative from the high school. But as we went through it and we said, okay, what are some next steps after this as well? It'll be looking at our physical education waiver and then also looking at virtual physical education and how do we make sure that we are the most efficient and effective program that there is. Thank you very much. Any questions? We'll try to answer them.
Right, so this is a discussion item tonight. Any questions for our presenters? John?
I got a question. So on the officiating portion, how many sports will we actually offer for that?
So the way it's set up, I've talked to Menominee Falls, and then they kind of piggybacked off Waterford. And Waterford's kind of the one that presented at the state clinic, or I guess state PE clinic. What you kind of do is you can come up with one sport, kind of everyone in the class does. They use volleyball a lot because there's not a lot of movement. You're kind of sat in stations and just kind of learn rules, and then they work through it. And then the second one is kind of whatever the student wants. So if they want to get into football, basketball, wrestling, Anything.
And that's like a next year thing? Like they'll do the first one?
They'll do it at the same time.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it's kind of, the whole class would work on the one together, and then simultaneously you're kind of independent studying or small group studying the other one.
Now, I'm assuming the school could use officiators. So are we gonna like keep track of these students that complete these courses to offer them opportunities to work?
We need officials everywhere, so
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's certain restrictions on ages and what they can actually officiate. It gets into, you have to be over 18 to do high school sports, so it'd be
okay.
more youth sports where
Sure.
you're in, and then outside districts and all that conflict stuff, but
Cool.
it's laid out pretty nicely by the state.
Just a follow-up, do they need to pass some sort of WIAA test, or is it administered by whoever's administering the curriculum? How does that work?
As far as I understand, they get basically everything, and then we would take the test kind of independently and then submit it, so.
Other questions? Kurt?
So with these 4 new classes, do we have current staff to teach them? I know we have a bunch of coaches in the district, so again,
Yeah,
maybe elaborate on that.
I think we will, as we build out, because this would be going forward in 24, 25. Our current staff, we're really excited about the new opportunities and kind of getting out of the norm of what we're doing now. We'll kind of own different things, as part of it. I think from if you're speaking specifically to like FTE, eliminating some of the redundancy in personal fitness, if we sunset that, it should kind of balance out, because a lot of these are going to be, depending on student, desire, of course, if there's a lot of kids that sign up for it. It's kind of a one-for-one wash as far as personal fitness replaces that one officiating class.
Maybe one follow-on question. Seems like, I love the ideas of the new courses and switching, so it all sounds good. Are we one of the school districts on the forefront of offering like an officiating class, or are many districts doing it right now?
A lot of schools are offering the officiating already.
Okay.
So it's been within the last 5 years, it's kind of grown. And then it's pretty much almost everyone in the North Shore Conference right now is offering it. Pretty close.
A question on the intro to the athletic training. It sounds like a great partnership with Aurora Sports Medicine, if I have that right. So is that a class that's taught by our staff in partnership with Aurora? Is Aurora teaching it? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it would be co-taught depending on the extent of that relationship. What I envision, like if I'm teaching it, I'm going to do much of the classroom work. When we get to the lab areas where I can tape an ankle, but the actual athletic trainer who's certified in it is going to be able to do it better. And then maybe over time, if I taught it for 3-4 years in a row, I'm going to we can take that over a little bit more. But then they can also supervise some of those additional hours as well.
Great. Other questions? So as a discussion item, I think we'll see this on a future agenda for potential action. Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, our next discussion item is the 2023-2024 initial budget. And Andy Sarno, our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, will present this. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. This is one of those moments that, as you can imagine, a fair amount of work has gone into this evening. We discussed, I believe it was on May 8th, why this preliminary budget, even though there's so many assumptions at this point in time, why we bring it forward is to maintain transparency with the community, but it's also then to begin spending as well as incurring revenues. So wanted to just share a little bit of information, kind of a background, and then I have a brief document that we'll be reviewing. But budget timeline, I shared this a couple weeks, I believe it was a month ago. But we're at that May-June timeline when we're bringing this information forward. Again, much of it is very preliminary, but there are steps ahead of us yet, some pretty formal steps. This does require board action to accept the preliminary budget, but it does not maintain the requirement of the posting in the newspaper and some of those others. And as you see there, from May to June until that September 25th annual meeting and budget hearing, that's a lot of time that goes in between. Please know that we continue to stay in touch with you as information becomes available, and there will be future presentations. I think we've already been in front of you about 4 or 5 times this spring, but a lot of stuff ahead of us. But as cliche as it might sound, September will be here before we know it, and we'll be gearing up for that annual meeting. Just a couple key points, and important because as we focus on this next year's budget that we're only about 3 weeks away from, the Joint Finance Committee, it's the biennial budget, and that the Joint Finance Committee is yet to take up education. So we heard here about a month ago, that'll probably be late May, and then it was early June, and now it may be June 12th, which is next Monday. So just wanted to let you know there's nothing new in here that we haven't talked about because they haven't spoken about it yet. The 2022-23, the year that we're just ending, that we only have 3 weeks left it's really important. It's even more important this year than in previous years because of those ESSER dollars that we're using to balance the budget. On May 8th, a month ago tonight, I spoke to you and said, hey, get ready because this night tonight, we're gonna be busy. We're gonna be talking about the preliminary budget for next year. We're gonna be doing a revised budget. We're not quite ready yet with that revised budget. I have in here a document that I'm calling, let me get it right, the updated budget, but I don't want to call it a revised because there hasn't been action and we're still working on it a little bit. The way that we're ending the year with health insurance, I gave a heads up that we're not having an awesome year with health, first time in a number of years that that's occurring. And as well, how are we ending the year with other areas of spending, understanding that and making sure that we're addressing needs. But that 22-23 fiscal year end is more important. I'd like to point out, and I think we've probably beat this to death just a little bit, we are done levying for debt, both non-referendum, that's within the revenue limit, and I'll show that, but as well our referendum-approved debt or 2 prior debt issues that we had, we're done. We do have dollars that are set aside for future payments over the next couple of years, but we're done levying for that by my best estimation. In fact, we may have just a little bit too much because of the interest income that we're receiving. Please keep in mind, and I think I say this 2 if not 3 times, this is very preliminary, but at this point in time, the levy, the mill rate, it's projected, and I can't even necessarily say it's gonna be flat. It will go down. We're still levying this year about $6 million for debt that we won't be levying next year. So unless something really radical happens at the state, we're estimating that both of those, we can safely say at a minimum going to be flat. I don't know how it would happen and that both the levy as well as the mill rate won't decrease again this year coming up. Don't want to overpromise by any means. Couple items. So again, as we have May or June that we're into now through October, so we continue to monitor enrollment. We align our staffing with those needs. We take a look at all of that. Salaries and benefits, those are cost estimates at this point in time. We will make sure we continue to update and finalize those. We continue to look at our instructional delivery models. We evaluate contracts. We take a look at all kinds of expenses that are recurring. We make sure we don't put ourselves in a position where we lock ourselves into an agreement for too long of a period. As you can imagine, our facilities projects are already well underway. Mr. Harder and his team in technology, they're already gearing up, finalizing purchases to roll them out and make sure we're maximizing those dollars. Curriculum and development, curriculum and instruction, they're gearing up for summer events. But again, second time, patience is appreciated. Estimates and assumptions are utilized, but we'll continue to get new information. So at this point in time, I'd like to transition to the document that I have, but does anybody have any questions right now? Okay. I'm gonna jump over to the preliminary budget. This was uploaded at about 5 o'clock today. I apologize for that. It did not give you guys time to review. So please, between now and I anticipate bringing this forward 2 weeks from tonight for action. We incorporate all of the discussion, any questions that you might ask into any revisions between now and then. So please don't be shy and ask. This is the same format that I've used. I did add 1 column, but it's the same format that I consistently use for the quarterly reports, for the budget revisions. Anytime I try to get in front of you, yellow is fund balance. That's equity accounts, dollars where we have set aside for future use or designated purposes. Green we like to put as revenues, and that kind of salmony orange, depending on what screen you look at, are expenditures. So we total them out in the black columns, and again, starting balance plus revenues minus expenditures equals the ending anticipated fund balance. The column that I added for this evening, because it is yet to be finalized, last year I brought this forward in a different sequence. I added the updated budget again because that has such an impact on next year. So we're going to really be focusing on this purple column, this furthest to the right column, but I did include an updated budget with the original budget that was approved last October. Have this organized by fund, which is our general fund, the main area, and when we talk about revenue limits, this is where it primarily hits. Our fund balance has held steady over the last couple of years, and as we focus on 2023-24, this information in front of us is projected. We use the Baird forecast model. It's probably one of the biggest spreadsheets I've ever seen. Pretty comprehensive. We've utilized that, taken this into account with any adjustments, the work that I spoke about, that cabinet, even as we went out to the schools and provided information and listened with those events that we had at all the schools. We've included all of that in here as well. There's projections with increases, there's staffing, making sure that we're aligned with our student to staff ratios. All of those have been brought in. I shared a month ago about the health insurance, so in here is a 9% increase, but we're looking at a redesign potentially where there may be some savings that would impact the bottom line of the budget. Again, a lot of assumptions, a lot of the revenues are based on our students and the impact that that will have on the revenue limit. But again, at this point in time, it's the best information that we have. Balanced budget, this is very difficult, and I'm going to share a couple other funds with you that are impacted by this, but we do at this point in time, in a difficult manner, have a balanced budget. Ooh, that is funky. Funky font, I apologize. Fund 21, this is our gift fund. At all of the schools, we have information or financial information in a segregated account. When somebody donates money or the students fundraise, these are dollars set aside. This is a little bit unpredictable of an activity. They change on occasion. Hey, there's going to be a new trip, or hey, we're going to do a fundraiser. So it's a little bit of a moving target. But as I look at next year, they do have a sizable fund balance in this count, up in the top right, a little over $1 million at this point in time. I'm anticipating that they are going to be spending that for the first time in a little while. Based on, number one, is we restructured some of the fees at the high school. We rebuilt in some of the allocated dollars to them. And some of the fund or the activities within the Fund 21, this gift fund, they're going to be spending their balances that they've been building up over the last couple of years. Additionally, I believe that we have a couple trips coming up that they've already done some fundraising, and those expenses as we pay for the trip into the spring or into the fall and into the spring will happen. So I'm anticipating just a little bit of deficit, purposeful deficit there of equity. Fund 27 is our special education fund. So this is any program or services for students that qualify for this with an IEP, an individualized education plan. Again, much of this is preliminary at this point in time. One big piece that I have is the special ed categorical aid and high cost. There is a large increase from this year to next year, from the year that we're in right now. And again, a lot of the talk at the state level is this is for special education students and those services that they're providing. We're anticipating a little bit of an increase in that. The governor has proposed a larger increase. There's a lot of school districts that are asking because this is dollar for dollar, and we're supplanting this by about $9 million every year. So it's something that's supported, but again, based on the state budget and when that's finalized, we will see. On the expenditure side right here in the middle of the page, we're anticipating, again, estimates that I've used for those programs and services at this point in time. Fund 29, the bottom block that we have, this is our Head Start countywide program. Ms. Malsum and her team are working with a budget. At this point in time, we don't have the finalized carryover. She is, which is why we see just a little bit of a decrease in the funding for next year compared to this year. She had carryover that we're using right now, but we will finalize this. It's preliminary at this point in time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask as well. Next two areas, this is for our debt service, and as you can imagine, I shared already, and we've spoken about this for a little over a year, but our non-referendum debt, this is that debt that the board has the authority to enter into. I highlighted this $1 million, that's the last payment that will be happening in April. This fund is within the revenue limit, so any dollars that are repaid here comes out of our operational restrictions. But it's our last payment of $1 million. We have fund balance that covers that, short of the little bit of interest that we'll be earning. In fact, as you can see, we may even have just a little bit of extra dollars here by fiscal year end that can get transferred back to the general fund. Fund 39 is our referendum debt. We've been continuing. We can see some historical information there. Levied just over $6 million this year, but that dark green, we don't need to levy next year because we have enough in reserves for that. So the remainder, a little over $3 million a year for the next couple of years, and that debt will be satisfied. I believe it's by April of 2026. I'm going to talk, this is our Fund 40s. So this is generally where, I'm just going to quick jump down to this bottom one, Fund 49. So we put our Barton proceeds when we sold Barton Elementary, put the proceeds there because we wanted to designate those dollars for facilities-related projects. That's how all three of these funds can be viewed, and in a manner of speaking, they serve different purposes. There's kind of pluses and minuses of all three. But I'd almost call this bucket number 2, bucket number 3, and bucket number 4 related to facilities, because Dave Ross currently, as we were on page 1, currently has a general fund budget as well, approximately $3 million. We've been utilizing these funds, these other 3 buckets, a little bit more heavily in the last couple of years because our facility needs exist. The dollars are there for that purpose, but I wanted to point out, and this is fairly big, it's important to point this out, Fund 46, middle section. So this is the Capital Improvement Trust. We've only been putting dollars into this fund. Whenever there's remaining dollars at fiscal year end, we've been adding to that, and it's strategic because it allows us to maximize our state aid. That's the purpose behind that fund for facilities. But I'm proposing at this point in time that we spend about $2.1 million of that this coming year. I'm going to jump up to Fund 41. So this is that second bucket outside of our general fund that Mr. Ross has, but the capital expansion in Fund 41. There's a resolution at our annual meeting, at annual budget hearing, where we ask the community to vote on a certain dollar amount, and that's been past practice for several years now. To balance this year's budget at this point in time with the information that we have, to balance the general fund, it's my recommendation for discussion that we hold up on these dollars for 2023-24. We need a plan because those dollars that we're setting aside serve a large purpose, an important purpose for our facilities, but to balance the budget at this point in time with the unknown state budget, as well as not knowing how we're going to end this current fiscal year, not proposing that any dollars go into there, which is why, jumping down to that middle box in the dark orange, is proposing some expenditures be moved down there because those are important projects. Dave Ross is well underway, keeping our envelope dry, making sure that we're doing lighting projects that are energy efficient, a lot of those types of activities that are important to continue. Any questions on that?
I actually do have a question.
Please.
So as we near the end of the debt from referendum, is that Fund 46, are we able to stash money in there after that to pay for Jackson?
Yeah, great question. So all of these funds that we're looking at right now on the screen, Fund 41, Fund 46, they're within the revenue limit. And so we have been putting money in Fund 41 on an annual basis, but that does steal from our general fund. And so this can't replace the debt because the debt is outside of the revenue limit. So the debt was voter approved through a referendum process. And until something were there to replace it, we can't levy. So I'm aware of one district that's tried that in the last 10 years, that they paid off all their debt and they just kept levying, and they had to pay it all back and explain that to their constituents. So we don't have that ability. We can put dollars in here, but again, they steal from the revenue limits that we have imposed. Does that make sense, I hope?
Yes, yeah, a little bit.
Sadly, right?
Yeah, I'll probably have more questions.
Okay.
So
Don't be
the,
shy.
the $2,086,000 in fund, whoops, excuse me, my binder almost came right off. The $2,086,000 in Fund 46 is an expenditure. So that's not a transfer to another fund. That would actually, correct? That would actually be expenditure for capital purposes?
Exactly.
That's your idea or your thought at this point?
Exactly. In use of the equity account or the beginning fund balance for next year with the intent that we have to get back on that again. Because that was a promise that was made to the community. At this point in time, it's difficult to be able to do that. But if you add that $2,086,000 plus up here the $744,000 up in Fund 41, those two total what we anticipate needing for this next fiscal year for all of those related facilities projects. So we're still putting those dollars aside. We're just using the equity that we were able to put into those accounts over the last 3 to 5 years. When health was performing and when COVID was there and things were a little bit weird, we had the ability to set aside some dollars for future use. And at this point in time, that's the recommendation that we're bringing forward.
When we talk generally about fund balance, we're thinking about Fund 10, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
So that expenditure would not affect Fund 10?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Those are dollars that were set aside in prior years. They're isolated at this point in time. I say that it takes an act of God to get those dollars out for some other purpose. In the act of God, as you would have to take action to pull those funds and put them somewhere else. But I really like both Fund 41, Fund 46. I like both of them. They serve different purposes for our funding, but I like them because they force districts to be able to set dollars aside for their facilities, which often gets overlooked, or it's even cyclical, that cuts get made because that's an easy department to make reductions. People don't often see the HVAC and forget how important it is to have heat and cooling and things like that.
And 46, if you recall, the history of West Bend and its creation of Fund 46 behind that. So Fund 46 was where you could start a clock and start doing some things and making contributions so that you had flexibility and can start doing things. And I think West Bend, in that, when we talked with Brian Brewer, was actually instrumental in crafting a legislative change to make that happen so that districts could leverage that.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, so we're gonna have a $8.3 million deficit though somewhere, or
Yep.
we're not gonna be able to make up somewhere.
Correct.
So I'm having a hard time, I understand that we're only able to use that for certain things, but at the end of the day, we're still overspending by $8.3 million, and then we're gonna go ahead and spend another 2 point something.
So thank you for pointing that out. The funds that we're looking at right now are facilities related. When I add those three up, it's about $2.9 million, $2.85 million. I'm going to scroll back up to our debt repayment. And again, we've levied those dollars. We don't need to levy any more referendum debt dollars, but we still have the payment. So that payment of a little over $3.2 million, that's factored into that deficit that you're talking about. So that, again, outside of the revenue limit, and if we didn't have those dollars, we'd be levying for it. So we're using the existing fund balance for that purpose.
Okay.
So that's a big chunk of those dollars. And as we, I think it was back, boy, I don't have it on me. I think it was back on March 6th when we talked about the variances from this year to next year, what's going on with the differences. That's important to understand that.
Yeah,
So
okay, that makes sense.
This
So
is
y-
new.
Yep.
Jen and I talked about, and Dave was sitting there, and I spoke with Julie Marks, our controller today. This is new today. This is pretty big that we're utilizing some of those Fund 46 dollars. We haven't done that yet. The 5 years was up here about 2 or 3 years ago. We had that ability to jump in there. I think there's been discussion at the board to utilize those dollars on a strategic purpose, which we are. But it is making it appear as though we have a deficit.
But
because
we
we
can't,
do.
we can't add it to revenue, so there's the difference there.
Correct.
That makes sense. Okay.
Well, and I think, John, you're on the same thing I was. My question around Fund 10, because when I scroll back up to Fund 10, it shows the beginning fund balance and the ending fund balance being equal.
Yeah.
So actually, we are not
It's
losing
balanced
fund
budget.
balance.
It's a balanced budget. It's
But-
a tough balanced budget.
Right, but when you're spending, but when you're spending money that we've set aside for facilities, on the facilities, that's like a withdrawal. And that's what's contributing to this minus, so to speak.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right,
All right. I would like to compliment, because it's a team member that I've really enjoyed working with over this last year, but nutrition services, or food service, if you want to call it that, Fund 50. So Tom Dembski joined us last August. If you recall, when we're setting prices for meals last spring, trying to understand, we're coming off all the free meals and what does staffing look like, and oh my gosh, food is so expensive now. Tom and his team ran a balanced budget this year. They've increased participation at several schools. They're targeting more schools for next year. They're doing a great job. Problem being is that they built up an equity account, and again, $100,000 here, Mr. Donaldson, is Fund 50, which that's its own little entity. They're a isolated fund. We can't steal from them. They can only steal from us. But that fund balance that they have of a little over $1.7 million, we need to bring that down. That's a DPI or even a USDA requirement. So there needs to be a plan behind it. We need to make sure it's an investment into the program, but between staffing, food, and equipment, because they have a fair amount of older equipment, and we need to make sure that we're getting good quality food, especially if we're gonna build up the program. But I do have about $200,000 deficit because they do need to make an investment, a required investment into their program, so. Fund 73 is our other post-employment benefit trust. I apologize for the acronym, but that doesn't fit into my little black box that I have there. Again, this is an area that we have an outstanding liability, so it's people that are still here that we're setting dollars aside for their retirement, or retirees that we're paying for their pension, not state, but a district pension. We've been able to set dollars aside for future use. And again, this is another piece where we've been setting aside a little over $1.5 million. I highlight that revenue in dark blue that at this point in time, again, with the uncertainty of the state budget, I can't make a recommendation to do that. We have an actuarial study every 2 years. We make sure that we're in compliance with the DPI requirements for this fund, because there are some requirements associated with it. We work with our auditors. We work with Brian Brewer from Baird. The dollars that we have set aside at this point in time, recommending use right now for future, subject to change, depending on how we end the current year and depending on what the state budget provides moving forward. This is another area, much like Fund 41, where we're setting dollars aside. We have to get back on track. This is not something that's sustainable, but at this point in time, it's a recommendation for consideration. Last two funds, we have our community services fund. This is something where I can say, safely say, all the program services that we operate in this fund that's outside of the typical school day, they've had dollars that have been able to be set aside for their use. We have had a large fund balance several years ago that we've been dwindling down purposefully. It's not good or healthy to carry a large fund balance, but we have a large fund balance that's built again this year. We levied the additional $200,000 that we were unable to spend, but it'd be my recommendation that we come up with a plan. This is still a preliminary budget. We need to make sure that we understand it, how we're utilizing these dollars, coming back to cabinet, and just making sure that we're refining that, particular to the fund balance that's grown. But wanted to be able to just point that out, that it's not intended to keep that there forever. We have a cooperative for two sports, the Ice Bears hockey as well as the Rush lacrosse. So in the past, it had just been the Ice Bears hockey team, but lacrosse has been added. We're going to be the fiscal agent for both the boys as well as the girls. And so the budget that's reflected in next year's budget incorporates the lacrosse edition with other participating school districts. So all those finances will flow through us, just like the boys hockey has done over the past several years. Be happy to answer any other questions.
I
Go
just
ahead,
got a
Kurt.
question on mill rate again. If I'm here, going back a little bit in your presentation, our mill rate was $7.97, and it went down to $6.37 for this budget. So that's a reduction again of $1.60. I saw my tax bill go down. If you and so I'm just pointing mill rates out. And I know we're in a financial situation. I was just checking the mill rates in the Green Bay School District. They're paying $8 this year. Greendale School District, $9.01. Germantown, just down the way, $8.28. So they're all $2-ish above what we pay. I'm just pointing that out on a mill rate. We've been very conscious with paying off our debt, and spending each dollar. I know we're in a little tough situation now. There's a heck of a lot of school districts in a tougher situation with a higher mill rate, and Green Bay budget deficit is $36 million. This is, again, maybe my comments you can comment on or not, but I think the state's in a position where they're going to have to fund some of these school districts' budget shortfalls with the surplus that the state has. So I'm hoping they do that, some with us, being a low-spending district. But I just wanted to point out, overall, for a taxpayer dollar-wise and compared to other districts, we have our challenges, but a lot of districts have bigger challenges than us. But I'm willing to roll up our sleeves and solve them like this board is. I just want to put things in perspective, more so with my comments.
Nicely put.
Other questions? I think you'd do me the favor of, if you could switch to the PowerPoint. I just wanted to ask you a question on the budget timeline.
Yeah.
Because it's a discussion item tonight.
Yep.
It'll be coming back, I believe, at the next board meeting for approval.
Correct.
But let's just walk through that a little bit, because in the private sector, when you approve a budget, you're done. And, right, so this approval, let's talk about what this approval really means, because just so that we're very, very clear with the public, that when we're approving it, it seems to me like we're approving the preliminary budget. So if you could go to the second slide in the timeline in that.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
I think it's slide 2 in the PowerPoint deck.
Yep. Oh.
Perfect.
Yep.
So you've highlighted in blue, May, June, preliminary budget discussion and approval. That's what we're talking about. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes after that. So tell us what it means next week if we approve this budget. What does that mean?
Yeah. So again, sharing information with you, with the community, making sure that people know, stakeholders know that some work has been done. A significant amount of work has been done. It also allows us, and again, I think if I look back a month ago into the May 8th, I had a timeline of the DPI. This is step number 1 of the budget cycle. We even have a board policy that talks about approving a preliminary budget so we can begin incurring expenses and receiving revenues. Because without a formal budget in place, a preliminary budget, and that's exactly what it is. It's a preliminary budget. It allows us to begin those activities. So that's the purpose behind it. It is non-binding. We are not setting the mill rate. In fact, I felt a little bit overextended today sharing what I did about the levy and the mill rate, but I think it's pretty convincing that it will not even stay where it's at right now. But the formal information will not happen until September 25th with the community meeting. That's why even the board sits in the audience that night. And then in October 23rd, when you're tasked with setting that final budget, final levy, final mill rate. So fair amount of time and events between now and then. Thank you for asking.
No, it's quite all right. Again, in the private sector, when you talk about approving a budget, that means something maybe a little bit different. But so it's a kind of a wacky process, but with a purpose, because we don't know what our revenues are going to be yet. The state hasn't told us. So I just wanted to point that out. We have some newer members and maybe some new viewers who are taking a look at this process. And so there are many steps yet to come.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other questions?
I have a question.
Of course, June, go ahead.
So as I'm looking through this with a fine-tooth comb over the next 2 weeks, I'm curious where the ARPA grant that was presented in our last meeting falls.
Yep,
Is that a Fund
exactly.
12 or a different
Yeah.
fund?
So the way that I have this broken out, if you want me to geek out for just a second, we have something called the WUFAR. So it's the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirements. It's several strands of number that essentially say the who, what, where, and why. We have to log everything. So you may have a budget, what's a kind of personal financial software, Quicken. You may have Quicken and you can say, these are gonna be our fund money, and this is our money that we have to set aside for our mortgage, and this is gonna be our utilities. We code all of that in pretty great detail. The Department of Public Instruction expects it. Our information gets pulled up to the state regularly, and when we're out of compliance with the way things are coded, it rejects it and it says fix it. So the way that I have this laid out, call this the what, is the revenues. It's coming from local sources, property taxes, gate receipts. What are we receipting? We're receipting the property taxes. So the grant specific that you're talking about, there's a strand of numbers whenever we have something that's that specific, and it has to be siloed with revenues and expenditures that align. That's a project number, okay? And this report doesn't have that level of detail, but I made sure, and I worked with Emily Melstrand and her team, that that's captured in here in the revised budget appropriately. So we've identified that as a spending source for expenditures, whether we're adding expenditures or even identifying current costs that qualify for that. So you don't see it on here because it's not that level of detail. Yeah. But if you'd like information on it, I can get that for you. But usually when we receive grants, we have a little bit of flexibility in how they're spent, but we're often told how they need to be spent. And that's one where we have a little bit of flexibility. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Other questions? Thank you. Certainly more work between now and next board meeting. We'll see this back at the next board meeting. Thank you for your presentation. All right. Make sure that I am out of order here. Get back to the right section here. Okay, that concluded our discussion items. So we now move to action items. And our first action item is out-of-state travel for national debate finals. And I think we have some folks here. Molly Hengst. I see Molly.
Good evening. I am here representing the East and West Debate Program with my co-curricular hat on. Debate is one of our co-curricular programs. We're seeking approval for one of our East sophomores to attend the National Speech and Debate Association National Tournament in Phoenix, Arizona, which is June 10th through the 16th. It's a very prestigious tournament. We're pretty excited to have this student being invited, qualified. The trip details have been provided to you in board docs, and I have with me our debate advisor, John Knetzger, and in case you have any specific questions about the trip.
Let's talk a little bit about this historically. Is this a trip? Is this an event that was attended by students in the past?
This is perfect. This is exactly why I brought him up here.
Look at that. All right.
Take it away, John. Yeah.
I'll brag a little bit. So I took over the program this year from Doris Sexton. If you don't know that name, you aren't from West Bend. Doris, in fact, attended this tournament as a student at West Bend High School when there was one West Bend High School. So yes, we've had students qualify, I won't say every single year, but most years. Dakota, who we're seeking approval for tonight, qualified last year as a freshman. So we're hoping that as a senior, she'll qualify for the fourth time and receive recognition from the National Speech and Debate Association for that accomplishment. So Wisconsin's divided up into two districts, and I would say it's north and south. It's geographically not actually north and south, but so from Milwaukee area out to La Crosse, some Madison schools, Dakota was one of two students to qualify in her style of debate. So this is a pretty significant accomplishment for her.
Let me just talk a little bit. I'm just looking through here with regard to the cost of the trip, or how they're deferred, the sources of the funds. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So this is funded primarily the district. It's much like when we send students to state, because we speak to that often. So we will provide the transportation, and there is a food allowance, and John is going along with his assistant.
Actually, the assistant's going under.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
just
going.
Rachel's going. John's not going on this trip. There's so many debate and forensics trips going on. John is not going on this one. Rachel is the chaperone. So it is completely funded by us, by the district, as an opportunity that she has earned and qualified for through the participation through our program.
Other questions? So we're asking for this as an approval item because it sounds like she's qualified for a tournament that begins in the very near future. Is that right?
Correct. We are seeking approval for this trip.
All right. Any thoughts?
I think it sounds like a great opportunity for West Bend to be represented.
The only thing I want to say yes, but the only thing I have a question on is our policy regarding 1-to-1 student and chaperone ratio. I don't know if that's a concern, if that's a normal thing, but typically in sports and stuff like that, you're not 1-to-1 adult to student athlete or debate.
Because it's an individual student that we've so named, then I'll make sure and follow up with the board individually. I wouldn't want to publicly speak about that. But yeah, I hear your concern. We'll speak and make sure that that is attended to.
I just don't know if the parents had agreed, they're, obviously they probably signed off on all the stuff ahead of time but
They also may be going.
So, hopefully, yeah. Okay.
Other questions? Right, this is an action item. I'd move to approve the request for out-of-state travel for national debate finals as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kurt. Motion and second to approve the out-of-state travel.
It was Chad,
I
actually.
believe that was Dr. Temez.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies. Dr. Temez, thank you. I should have looked up. You have similar voices. I need to remember that with our new seating arrangement. My apologies. So we have a motion and second on the floor to approve the out-of-state travel. Any final discussion?
I'm going to recuse.
Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we'll mark Mr. Donaldson as recusing himself. Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you for your presentation tonight. We appreciate it. Good luck at the finals. Next action item, facility analysis and architect selection process. And this is a presentation that we had heard at our last board meeting.
It is.
So, Mr. Ross, I don't know if you have any new information to present or a refresher. The floor is yours.
Well, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the district sent out a request for proposal to various architectural firms in the area to help us with an architectural study of the district, basically put together a facilities analysis, and then come up with a long-term plan and potential referendum if you so choose to go that direction. 2 of the 4 firms declined to participate in the RFP just based upon their volume of work at this particular time. The 2 remaining firms came in last week. We did an in-depth interview with each of them. I think each one lasted about 2 hours. And they were mostly set up conversationally rather than them providing a PowerPoint and talking to that. So the conversational aspect of it was very helpful. We were able to get into a lot of different areas. The firms were then scored on a weighted scoring criteria, which you have in your executive summary. And unanimously, the team that sat around the table decided that Epstein-Ewen would be the best candidate for what we were looking for. As I said, it was an in-depth interview, went for quite a while. The way the RFP was set up would be the architect would actually do all the preliminary work before, if you would decide to go to referendum, and then they would continue on based on a percentage fee of the total referendum amount, if again, you went that direction. So On the front end, just doing the preliminary work, Epstein Union was more expensive. However, going to the end of the process and knowing what I know about the facilities in this district, it's going to be not an inexpensive fix. That in the grand scheme of things, should a referendum be successful, we would actually be money ahead by going with Epstein Union in the long run. So.
John?
Can you speak to what they're going to be proposing or looking at?
They're going to be looking at every facility in the district and coming up with an evaluation. I provided you with information on our facilities already, but again, if an architectural firm or any professional firm is going to be looking at this, they're going to want to verify a lot of that information. We've set up a preliminary timeline, and that work would take place over the summer months. After that, we'll verify some costs with the architectural firm, and then, that's another step we have to take is an RFP for a construction manager. But that'll be down the road a little bit, not very far, but a little bit. And then they would actually work with the community, with the district, with the board to come up with any potential solutions to the plan, and then for a plan, and then develop that into a long-range plan that would overlay actually with the financial plan, so that we could look at everything and make sure that everything makes sense and the community knows what to expect down the road.
So you say every building, are we talking about, are they going to be solutioning a Jackson school?
Absolutely.
So that's on the docket as well, okay.
Probably one of the higher items on the list.
Perfect.
And will they be utilizing the software that was created to analyze different districts?
I'll be utilizing the software, but then I feed that work. So each firm, when we interviewed, was well aware of the process that I'd be undertaking. And again, recall that we'll be taking each school per prior board discussion, because I think when we got here, everyone made some assumptions about what schools. So we always just like to allay everyone's fear. There's no assumptions on anything. There's no, special plan. We will look at and bring every school online, offline, look at multiple configurations. And then, like you said, you've got some external validation on our current findings, that plan preparation, and then high engagement with our community around solutions. So, but yeah, I'll be providing a lot of that background with that software to feed their work. Good question.
No, I appreciate the title of this item because I don't want folks thinking, oh, they're designing new buildings. This is a facility analysis project.
Correct.
So really taking a look at what we have today and thinking about what we need in the future.
Exactly.
That's what they're focusing on.
Understanding what we have, yes.
Just want to be very clear. Other questions or thoughts?
What fund does this come out of?
This will come out of it's right now I have some dollars set aside in our 310 account, which is a personal services account.
Question? Other questions? Kurt?
Yeah, could you go over the time frame of, or is that yet to be determined on?
It's kind of yet to be determined, but obviously there's nothing this fall in terms of elections that would kind of fall into place. But next year there are two. There's one in spring and one in fall. Hitting the spring deadline is going to be tough given all the work that needs to be done to come up with the appropriate solution. And then there's the education piece for the community that we have to go through as well. There are some certain dates that we have to hit. For example, if we were to look at a spring referendum, if that was in the cards, then the board would have to form the question at the end of January. That's only 6 months away, and to do all of that work in that time period, it's a bit of a stretch. Secondly, if we go to November, it's a presidential election, so there would certainly be appropriate voter turnout at that point. So, and also give us a little more room just to get the work done that needs to be accomplished.
And to your point, like you said, spring, you're backing that all the way up to January for a board decision with discussions prior. If you're looking at a November, you make that decision and formalize that in the August prior to that. So again, we want a lot of we would recommend a lot of runway in front of us to engage our public and community so that the board is soliciting their input.
Additional discussion or questions? Hearing none, I would move to approve the architect selection as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Motion and second to approve the architect selection as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. And the work
Very much.
begins.
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you. All right, I think that concludes our action items. We are on to future agenda items. Just want to be sure I haven't skipped anything. Future agenda items. And we start with our board meeting calendar. So we have regular school board meetings scheduled, 5:30 p.m. at the Education Service Center on June 19, and then next would be July 10th. So those would be the next two regular board meetings. We have a policy committee meeting currently set at the Education Service Center June 13 at 4:30. Oh, that's,
Our policy committee is June 20th. There was an error. This was the error in the original. We've corrected and made in red.
oh, thank you.
So,
I read that in reverse.
Yep, that's okay. It was put in there, that it was some committee members who caught that. So the curriculum committee is meeting June 13th, 4:30 p.m., and we, as a policy committee, are meeting June 20th at 4 p.m. We'll make sure all of our other calendars are updated. So again, curriculum committee, meeting June 13th at 4:30 p.m. Policy committee, and again, not as stated, we've got that in bold and red right under it. June 20th is the policy committee at 4 p.m. So we apologize for that.
Okay, so those items will be listed, though, in board docs and other spots for the official calendar, and there'll be official postings for all those
And
meetings. so.
I've updated board docs here as well, so our general public, in case they go here for their information, they'll catch that.
Great, excellent. Any questions on the board calendar? Any items then for follow-up and communication? All right. We've reached the end of our planned agenda then. Since we have no other items, I would move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Follow-up items, the books that we were talking about removing or putting on hold?
So I don't have the authority to remove them unless someone submits that form. So I can send you that form if you want that piece.
Yep.
So we spoke to that last time, so I can send you that if you want to
Can we
file
get
those.
it added to
Otherwise,
the agenda then? So if I get the form and stuff submitted, we can,
that's a form for reconsideration, so I can get you the policy, and we'd have to formally reconsider all of those. So
even though the books currently go against our policy?
they would have to go through the formal reconsideration process, yes.
Interesting.
All right, I have moved to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. Motion and second to adjourn. Final discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for attending and for watching.